As the best spy of a mysterious organization in the 23rd century, Gu Yiyi opened her eyes and became the stepmother of 3 children, successfully owning a handsome husband who was blind in both eyes. The family was short of food and clothing, which was disliked by everyone in the village. Even more troublesome siblings took turns appearing and selling their children under her name. Regarding this, Gu Yiyi said that if someone splashes dirty water, she will boil it into boiling water and throw it back. Beating siblings, tearing apart villains, raising children to earn money, and going from being the poorest in the village to becoming the richest person in the world all the way. Under her upbringing, the 3 little ones also achieved success one by one: genius top scorers, young generals, unparalleled female divine doctors, and those who competed to please stepped on the threshold. Just as Gu Yiyi felt that she could retire with great success and was planning to find a place with beautiful mountains and rivers to rest and retire, the blind and cheap husband not only suddenly regained his sight, but also became a regent who had disappeared several years ago and was in power. Gu Yiyi, who was firmly blocked by someone, said, "When did your eyes heal?" The Black Regent, who pretended to be blind and weak, begged for stickers all day, said, "I was fine when I was in Jiangjia Village. So I changed clothes in front of you before." Well, the lady's figure is really good. Chapter 1. The Empress cheated the corpse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Pingshan Town, Jiangjia Village. In the small courtyard, there is an old door panel, and a corpse is haphazardly covered with a straw mat on the door panel. The villagers who were watching did not show any signs of sadness, but chattered and discussed, with words filled with accusations. "I deserve it. I only know how to support my parents' family and treat 3 children unfairly. Now I've drowned in the well. Who said it wasn't, and even though everyone was dead, I didn't see her brother and sister.in-law come over. It's really retribution." The sound of words kept pouring into her ears, and Gu Yiyi felt a severe headache. She opened her eyes in a daze, and the first thing that caught her eye was the tattered straw mat covering her face. Before she could recover, she heard a voice say, "People are all dead, let's bury them quickly. If this weather continues, it will easily smell bad. Daddy has gone to bone someone, and when he comes back, he will bury it." A milky voice sounded. "Buried? Bury who?" Gu Yiyi's heart was stirred up, and she instantly regained consciousness. She lifted the tattered straw mat that covered her body and sat up. The discussion in the yard came to a sudden halt. After a brief silence like death, a fierce scream erupted. "Ah ah ah! Ghosts!" The villagers who were originally watching the excitement are now panicking and shouting. In the chaos, you squeeze me, I step on you, and a swarm of bees rushes out of the yard. Gu Yiyi was stunned, and the unfamiliar memories that flooded her mind quickly made her realize that she had traveled through time. She remembers being on a mission, only to be betrayed by her companions and eventually detonated a bomb to die together. And now she not only traveled through time to become a peasant girl with the same name as herself, but also the stepmother of 3 little dolls. Gu Yiyi jumped off the old door panel, looked around, and finally stopped on 3 pale-faced little dolls huddled not far away. "You, don't come over." Seeing Gu Yiyi looking at them, Bao immediately opened his 2 little arms to protect his younger brother and sister behind him, his young face tense tightly. "Don't be afraid, I'm not a ghost, I'm not dead." Gu Yiyi tried her best to soothe her with a gentle tone. Just as the words fell, a commotion suddenly erupted from behind. I saw the people who had just run away come back, followed by more villagers, each holding sickles and hoes, and even torches. They were gathered outside the yard, and no one dared to come in. They looked at Gu Yiyi with caution and fear. "Shen's wife, are you a human or a ghost?" "Of course it's a person." Gu Yiyi looked at the villagers and pointed to the scorching sun. "This is blue and white, and I have a shadow." Upon hearing Gu Yiyi's words, the villagers all lowered their heads to look. When they saw the clear shadows on the ground, many people breathed a sigh of relief. But someone still looked at her on guard and said, "Why did you suddenly come back to life?" "I just choked on water before, lost my breath for a moment, pretended to die, just recovered, so I woke up." Gu Yiyi tried to make her tone sound very credible. The idea of resurrecting from death in public is too bizarre. Since it has already been worn into this village, it cannot be killed by the villagers as ghosts and monsters. Seeing that Gu Yiyi's expression and tone were very normal, most of the villagers believed her. Just as they were about to put down their agricultural tools, a sharp female voice suddenly came from behind the crowd. "Don't believe her, she's just a fake corpse. You must burn her to death." Gu Yiyi frowned and looked at the woman walking forward from the crowd. At around the age of 18 or 19, she was dressed in clothing that was obviously better than other villagers, with a barely good-looking appearance. However, there was a hint of sarcasm between her eyebrows and eyes, and there was a clear disgust in her expression towards Gu Yiyi. She recognized that the other party was Jiangjia, the daughter of the village chief's family. People are dead, how could they possibly come back to life? She must have faked a corpse. "If we don't burn it, we'll be done," Jiangjia exclaimed loudly. As soon as these words were spoken, some of the villagers were shaken again. "Fake corpse. Is it really fake?" "Of course it's true." Jiangjia immediately spoke, "You must burn her to death." "I am a human being, if I were burned to death, then you would be guilty of murder," Gu Yiyi said coldly, her gaze fixed on Jiangjia. If she really thinks she's a fake corpse, how could Jiangjia dare to go to the forefront? She might want to burn herself under this name. Jiangjia snorted coldly, "Don't scare people here. My dad is the village chief, and burning you is also for the whole village." As she spoke, Jiangjia looked at the young and strong villagers beside her and said, "What are you still doing? Go up and catch her." Several villagers looked at each other, and no one dared to step forward immediately. Jiangjia spoke urgently again and said, "What are you afraid of? Catching her is making a contribution. I'll have my dad divide a few good plots of land for you." As soon as these words were spoken, several villagers were immediately moved. They looked at each other a few times, then boldly walked into the yard and rushed towards Gu Yiyi, thinking that they should catch the person first. Gu Yiyi dodged and spoke coldly, "I'll say it again. I'm a human, and if you continue to act recklessly, I won't be polite. Quickly catch her." Jiangjia was still urging urgently. A few people couldn't bear to worry too much, and their hearts became fierce as they once again attacked Gu Yiyi. Gu Yiyi's eyebrows and eyes turned cold, her figure flickered, and she kicked the nearest villager to the ground. Before everyone could see her movements clearly, the remaining few were either grabbed by her wrist, a sharp over-shoulder throw, or simply kicked over by her. In almost the blink of an eye, several strong men all fell to the ground and howled in sorrow. The villagers were all stunned. What was the situation? "Do you still want to take action?" Gu Yiyi looked at Jiangjia with a faint gaze. The latter shuddered fiercely in her heart, feeling a sense of fear involuntarily. But when she regained her senses, she immediately shouted to the remaining villagers, "You see it all, she's just a fake corpse. Hurry up and catch her." Upon hearing these words, the villagers looked at the fallen people and were even more afraid to step forward. Finally, under the threat of Jiangjia moving out of the village head's father, a few more people, holding hoes and sickles, rushed towards Gu Yiyi. However, Gu Yiyi's movements were exceptionally sensitive, and the hoes and sickles she swung did not even touch the corners of her clothes. Jiangjia's face was extremely gloomy. From childhood to adulthood, what she disliked the most was Gu Yiyi's face. With her around, everyone will never think of themselves when it comes to being good-looking. Finally, Gu Yiyi passed away. Before she could be happy, the other party had actually lived again. No, she can't let Gu Yiyi steal her limelight again. Jiangjia gritted her teeth and snatched the torch from the nearby villagers. Taking advantage of Gu Yiyi's entanglement, she rushed forward and suddenly threw the torch towards Gu Yiyi's face. Chapter 2. A Beautiful Blind Husband. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Yu Guang caught a glimpse of the torch, and Gu Yiyi quickly took a step back. While avoiding the hoe, she turned around and lifted her leg, kicking the torch back with a sharp kick. Jiangjia looked at the torches flying back, her lips completely frozen before she could even curl them up, and she was so scared that she froze in place. It wasn't until the torch was about to fall on her that she suddenly regained consciousness, screamed, hugged her head, and turned around. With a loud bang, the torch hit Jiangjia's back, causing her to scream in pain. More importantly, the torch ignited Jiangjia's scattered hair on her back. Her hair was burning, accompanied by the burning of Jiangjia's dress on her back. The burning light made her scream uncontrollably, reaching out to pat the fire backwards, but she couldn't reach her back. After the frightened villagers regained their senses, they hurriedly stepped forward to extinguish the fire for Jiangjia. Finally, Jiangjia rolled several times on the ground and was stepped on a few times before finally putting out the fire. I had a long fever for most of it, leaving a mess. My back dress also burned big holes, and I rolled on the ground with dust all over my face, feeling extremely embarrassed. Ah! Jiangjia shouted in pain and anger, "Bitch, I'll kill you." She rushed desperately towards Gu Yiyi, who sneered and curled her lips. With another kick, Jiangjia was kicked more than 10 feet in surprise and fell heavily to the ground. Jiangjia felt pain all over her body, almost falling apart, and lay on the ground cursing, "Bitch, bitch. I must tell my dad." As he spoke, he shouted to the villagers who were standing still, "Why are you still standing here? Hurry up and catch this slut. I see who dares." Gu Yiyi sneered and scanned the villagers present with sharp eyes. In this situation, it is obvious whether one is a human or a ghost. Most of the villagers resorted to violence because Jiangjia's father was the village chief, so they just followed her command. Continuing to explain was just a waste of words, it's better to use force directly to deter them. The villagers trembled with this gaze, their faces turning pale, and they dared not step forward. Jiangjia was almost furious, cursing the villagers while threatening Gu Yiyi. "Bitch, my dad knows he won't let you go, you. Even if your father is the village chief, there are still officials above him. You all want to burn me alive, but this is intentional homicide." Gu Yiyi paused for a moment, walked step by step to Jiangjia, and looked at her with a condescending gaze. "In my legitimate defense, if I accidentally kill or maim someone, it seems that it's not my fault." Gu Yiyi's tone was eerie, and her cold and piercing demeanor made people shiver uncontrollably. Not to mention the villagers, even Jiangjia was intimidated by this momentum and dared not speak again. Seeing this, Gu Yiyi sneered and withdrew her gaze, "Everyone, it's getting late. You should hurry back." Upon hearing Gu Yiyi's order to expel guests, everyone suddenly woke up from a dream. Many people picked up hoes and sickles that had fallen from the ground, and dared not interfere with pretending to be dead. They quickly left the Shen family yard as if fleeing for their lives. A few people went to help Jiangjia and wanted to take her away together. The latter looked at Gu Yiyi and felt not only hatred, but also a strong sense of humiliation. She was actually scared by Gu Yiyi, this slut. Glancing at the still burning torch on the ground, Jiangjia gritted her teeth fiercely, endured the pain, picked it up, and threw it towards Gu Yiyi again. "Bitch, you damn it." Upon hearing the commotion behind her, Gu Yiyi quickly dodged. However, with this throw, Jiangjia almost exhausted all her strength. Although the torch did not hit Gu Yiyi, it aimed towards the Bao and Bao who were huddled aside. The incident suddenly frightened all three dolls. Seeing the torch smashing towards them, Gu Yiyi's face changed and she immediately picked up a nearby wooden barrel, quickly smashing it towards the torch from the slanted side. The torch was smashed down, but the cloth strip that was originally stained with oil on it shattered, and the burning fragments splashed open. "Get away!" Gu Yiyi spoke loudly. Bao first regained his senses and immediately protected his younger siblings. But there was still a burning piece of cloth that happened to fall onto the back of Sanbao's hand, causing him to burst into tears in pain. Gu Yiyi immediately stepped forward, picked up Sanbao, and entered the kitchen to rinse him with cold water. Bao was startled when he saw Gu Yiyi carrying Sanbao away. He quickly followed suit and tried to stop him, but when he saw Gu Yiyi pouring cold water for Sanbao, he was stunned for a moment. The child's skin is delicate, and although she was promptly rinsed with cold water, she still burns a lot red. Gu Yiyi looked at Sanbao's tearful face and felt a pang of heartache. She was about to go out and settle accounts with Jiangjia when she heard a very pleasant male voice coming from the courtyard. "What happened? Brother Shen, you've come back. Your daughter.In.Law, she's alive again." A villager quickly spoke up. Bao, Bao, and Sanbao all ran out as soon as they heard Shen Changfeng coming back. "Daddy, Daddy." Gu Yiyi also walked to the kitchen door and looked at the man in the courtyard. He was dressed in coarse grey clothes, which had already turned a bit pale after washing, but it did not affect his overall temperament. The body is thin and slender, with a fair complexion that contrasts sharply with the skin tones of the surrounding villagers. Beautiful facial features with distinct contours, as if favored by heaven. Is this Shen Changfeng, the cheap husband of the original owner? Gu Yiyi sighed in her heart. Indeed she was born very well, but his gaze fell on the beautiful but scattered phoenix eyes of the other party. Unfortunately, Shen Changfeng was blind in both eyes. "Although I usually exchange bones for food for others, and I heard that when I first came to the village, I had some savings. I bought a few acres of thin farmland and rented it to the villagers to cultivate, which also earned me some money. It was really difficult for a blind person to take care of 3 children, and it was probably because of this that the other person, under the persuasion of the matchmaker, married the original owner. And now, all those acres of land have been occupied by the original owner's sister.In.Law. Sanbao, what's wrong with you?" Although he couldn't see it, Shen Changfeng immediately sensed the crying tone in Sanbao's tone. "Dad, my hand hurts." Sanbao pursed his mouth, tears hanging on his face. Bao looked at Jiangjia and said, "Daddy, it's Gu Yiyi." Jiangjia suddenly spoke loudly, interrupting Bao's words. She then pointed to Gu Yiyi at the kitchen door and said, "She's going to burn your son. Everyone can testify." After speaking, Jiangjia immediately looked at the other villagers and gave them a wink. "Haha." Gu Yiyi thought it was funny. Jiangjia wouldn't think it would be like this, so she could just throw the pot over her head. Several villagers looked at Jiangjia with complex expressions, but no one spoke. After all, even if they lie, the Shen family still has 3 dolls. Shen Changfeng's handsome face darkened as he followed the laughter just now and turned to speak in the direction of Gu Yiyi. "What's going on?" Chapter 3. Gu Yiyi's Surprise Discoveries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Dad, this time it's really not my mother, she just saved us." Bao's face furrowed as he looked at Gu Yiyi with confusion, surprise, and continued to be cautious, but he still spoke up to explain for Gu Yiyi. "Dad, big brother is right." Bao, a female doll, twisted her hair into 2 buns, also spoke up. "Although my mother usually treats them badly, she did save them just now." Sanbao is a little chatterbox, the youngest, but the most talkative. He likes to argue and talk non-stop on weekdays. At this moment, holding the back of her hand and pouring beans out of a bamboo tube, she suddenly revealed Gu Yiyi's fake corpse and everyone's plan to burn her to death. Gu Yiyi leaned against the kitchen door and listened without speaking. She wanted to know how Shen Changfeng would react when he heard her resurrection from the dead. After Sanbao finished speaking, he saw Shen Changfeng frown lightly, with a fleeting surprise on his face, but soon this surprise was suppressed. After a moment, Shen Changfeng turned around and spoke to several villagers. The statement of pretending to be a corpse is really absurd. Thinking about it now, it may just be a fake death. I didn't check it clearly and caused a misunderstanding. I hope everyone doesn't take it seriously. It's okay, it's okay. A villager quickly spoke up and nervously glanced at Gu Yiyi's direction, pulling out a stiff smile and saying, "We didn't figure it out. We just misunderstood. It's good to be alive, good to be alive." Jiangjia was unwilling and lay on the ground gritting her teeth, saying, "What does it mean to be alive? Then I was hurt by her. Miss Jiang, you almost burned a living person and also burned my son. If this incident really escalates, I'm afraid the village chief will also give an explanation." Shen Changfeng spoke calmly, with a calm tone, but it seemed to have a natural credibility that made it impossible to refute. Okay. Could you please take Miss Jiang back to treat her injury? I have trouble with my eyes, so I won't take her. Shen Changfeng spoke again in a polite tone, but with a hint of coldness. It's easy to say. The villagers quickly helped Jiangjia up. Although Jiangjia was unwilling, she was sweating profusely from the pain on her back and body. In the end, she glared at Gu Yiyi with hatred and was supported by the villagers before leaving. Interesting. Gu Yiyi carefully scrutinized Shen Changfeng. The temperament and tone of speech around me don't look like ordinary villagers no matter what. Just as she was looking around, Shen Changfeng suddenly turned his head and looked at her again. Who the hell are you? Although she couldn't see it, the sudden sharpness in her eyes still stunned Gu Yiyi. I am naturally your wife, Gu Yiyi. After calming down, Gu Yiyi walked forward and spoke. Shen Changfeng remained silent, but his heart was filled with suspicion. Just now, he was just worried that the villagers would discuss and cause trouble, so he spoke up like that. In fact, he was extremely certain that Gu Yiyi had already fallen into the well and drowned, with no breathing or pulse, and it was definitely not a fake death. And although he couldn't see the person in front of him, what he could be certain of was that the feeling the other person gave him was completely different from Gu Yiyi before. What exactly is this? Seeing Shen Changfeng not speaking, Gu Yiyi understood that the other party was doubting her, but she was not worried. Leaving aside the absurdity of borrowing a corpse to revive a soul, and even if Shen Changfeng had such doubts, he would definitely not speak up. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said anything fake death just now to dismiss the villagers. In such a village, if one really feels like a ghost and sets fire to the house in the middle of the night, the Shen family will also be implicated. Inside the yard, it was quiet. Shen Changfeng didn't speak, and the three dolls didn't speak. They just stayed quietly by Shen Changfeng's side, watching Gu Yiyi. Until, Gu. Bao's stomach exclaimed. She reached out to cover her stomach, but her moans became more pronounced, along with Sanbao's belly. Gu Yiyi looks at the small half-bag of rice that Shen Changfeng is holding. He goes forward and reaches for it. I'm going to cook congee. Shen Changfeng did not immediately let go, his face darkened. I promise I will never swallow it on my own. You probably don't want to watch the two treasures and three treasures go hungry, Gu Yiyi said seriously. Finally, Shen Changfeng let go of his hand, and Gu Yiyi took the rice bag and glanced at the back of Sanbao's hand. He softened his voice and comforted him. Sanbao, I'll cook congee first, and then I'll find herbs to bind it for you. After speaking, Gu Yiyi quickly walked to the kitchen. A few dolls stood still, their three little faces full of surprise. How could the mother speak to them in such a gentle tone? It's so strange. But Shen Changfeng frowned again, unsure of what he was thinking. In the kitchen, Gu Yiyi briefly looked around, then lit a fire to wash rice and began to cook congee. She thought very clearly, take it as it comes, and after all, it can be considered as living again. As a newcomer, she had nowhere to go for a while. It's better to stay at the Shen family for now, but looking at the kitchen in front of her, apart from a few vegetables and a small bag of rice just brought in, there was no other food left. Gu Yiyi sighed lightly. The Shen family's things were basically taken by the original owner to subsidize his brother and sister. In law. The small half bag of rice alone could not last long even if it was just congee. If only his own personal space was still available. As soon as this idea came to her mind, Gu Yiyi suddenly noticed that the scene in front of her shook for a moment, and then a familiar space flashed in front of her. She was overjoyed that she was really still there. She was born in the 23rd century, and everyone in the organization has a personal space. Because she often has to perform various tasks, in addition to various weapons and a large amount of medicine, her space also stores a lot of food, and the things in the space will not expire no matter how long they are stored. Unexpectedly, not only did I travel by myself, but space also followed me. The only problem is that there are mostly ready-to-eat and fast food stored in the space, and there is no rice, flour, grains, or oil. Taking out the food recklessly is really suspicious. After thinking for a moment, Gu Yiyi poured the washed rice into the pot, took out 2 packs of compressed biscuits with a strong sense of fullness from the space, crushed them and added them to the pot. Even if the rice is not enough, the congee will be enough. After washing 2 more vegetables and chopping them into small pieces, Gu Yiyi put them into a pot. After finishing everything, she found the medicine powder for treating burns in the space, put it in her sleeve, and walked out of the kitchen. In the courtyard, the Bao and Bao had already found herbs. Shen Changfeng sat at an old wooden table, carefully dispensing medicine for San Bao. Just because I couldn't see and was afraid of hurting San Bao, my movements were very slow. The slender fingers have distinct joints, and although holding a brown cloth dipped in herbal juice, it still makes people feel pleasing to the eye. Gu Yiyi looked a bit dazed. To be honest, if it weren't for being blind and carrying 3 dolls, relying solely on this face, the people in the village who are willing to marry Shen Changfeng would have already crossed the threshold. Noticing the gaze of the Bao and Bao towards her, Gu Yiyi regained her composure and walked up straight. Let me do it. Chapter 4. 3 Treasures Missing. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Shen Changfeng's hand paused for a moment, without looking up or responding. Just as Gu Yiyi was about to reassure her again that she had no ill intentions, Shen Changfeng handed her the cloth in his hand. Lighter, San Bao is afraid of pain. Gu Yiyi was stunned for a moment, thinking that it would take Shen Changfeng some time to agree. She nodded, but realized that Shen Changfeng couldn't see, so she spoke up and said, "Okay, I will." Taking the cloth piece, Gu Yiyi looked at the crushed herb residue on the table and said, "Dayukeo." She looked at the Bao and said, "Did you find it?" Dayukeo has a blood-cooling effect and can indeed treat burns. The Bao and Bao exchanged a glance, and Bao timidly spoke, "Dad said this grass is useful. She found it on the roadside according to her dad's description. Dad just touched it and said it's not wrong." Gu Yiyi glanced at Shen Changfeng again and didn't ask any further questions. She just said to the Bao and Bao, "Can you help me get another clean cloth and some clean water?" The Bao and Bao nodded. Taking advantage of the 2 people fetching water and San Bao bowing his head to blow on the back of his hand, Gu Yiyi quietly sprinkled the medicinal powder onto the cloth in his hand. After the water came, Gu Yiyi washed her hands and then began to apply medicine to San Bao with a cloth. This medicine has a cooling effect. When mixed with the juice and stuck to the back of the hand, San Bao suddenly felt a much hotter sensation on the back of the hand and was no longer afraid to apply the medicine. Gu Yiyi carefully applied medicinal juice to all his wounds, and when it dried a little, she picked up a clean cloth and wrapped it up for him slightly. "Alright, when it's time to sleep, I'll reapply the medicine for you." Gu Yiyi reached out and rubbed San Bao's furry head, smiling as she spoke. Gu Yisheng is good-looking, with fair and delicate skin. Her eyes are curved when she smiles, but on weekdays, the original owner dislikes the 3 dolls very much and thinks they are just dragging oil. She always scolds them with a cold face and glares at them, never saying things so gently. Sanbao looked up at her in a daze, then lowered his head to look at the back of his hand. Suddenly, he felt that this stepmother didn't seem to be as annoying anymore. Gu Yiyi didn't know what Sanbao was thinking, but thought the three dolls were very cute. She cleaned up the herbs on the table, and soon the congee was ready. She filled a big bowl for 3 dolls and Shen Changfeng alone. Because it is mixed with compressed biscuits, congee is much thicker than usual, and it also has a fragrance. The 3 dolls were already hungry. They started at once. They could not drink such full and thick congee on weekdays. Shen Changfeng, smelling the special aroma of congee, frowned slightly, took a sip, and felt more and more strange. What do you use to cook congee? The unique secret recipe is safe, non-toxic and harmless. Gu Yiyi didn't intend to explain more, and took his bowl of congee and drank it. Not only 3 dolls, she is also hungry. Shen Changfeng's mind was full of doubts. Suspicious questions came to his mouth. Finally, he swallowed and slowly began to drink congee. After drinking congee, the 3 dolls looked much better. Especially for Sanbao, the wound on the back of his hand is not as painful anymore, and he is full again, restoring his chatterbox attribute. At one moment, he chattered with Dabao, Bao, and Shen Changfeng, and at another moment, he curiously peeked at Gu Yiyi. Looking at the 3 treasures exploring outside the kitchen, Gu Yiyi felt extremely cute. After thinking for a moment, I found a stack of craft paper in the space, took out a evenly torn piece, and then took out a few candies. I unpacked them, wrapped them in craft paper, and left the kitchen to give to Sanbao and the others. Fearing that they wouldn't dare to eat, Gu Yiyi took one herself first. The 3 dolls stared at the candy with sparkling eyes, but none of them reached out. Instead, they looked at Shen Changfeng and asked if they could eat it. After obtaining Shen Changfeng's permission, several people happily took the sugar. Do you want another one? Gu Yiyi handed the last one to Shen Changfeng. Where did it come from? Shen Changfeng asked in a deep voice. This sugar, and the congee just now. Take it as if it was something I had hidden before, anyway I used to eat alone a lot, Gu Yiyi replied with a smile. Seeing Shen Changfeng's expression unchanged, his unfocused gaze came over, yet still carrying an undeniable sharpness. Gu Yiyi thought for a moment and then said, whether you believe it or not, I really have no ill intentions. You can think of me as having walked away from the underworld, saved my life, and reformed. In short, from now on, as long as I haven't left, I will take good care of the 3 treasures and them. A sudden change in temperament, coupled with the addition of something out of thin air, naturally arouses suspicion. However, she did not want to compromise herself, pretend to be the original owner, learn from the other party's previous style, nor did she want to avoid suspicion from Shen Changfeng by resolutely not using anything in the space. More importantly, she wanted to take a gamble that even if Shen Changfeng suspected her, as long as she didn't harm them, Shen Changfeng wouldn't expose herself. Of course, he also has no evidence to prove that he is not the original owner. After a long time, Shen Changfeng finally spoke up, okay, remember what you said. He doesn't believe in any ghosts or monsters in this world. As for Gu Yiyi, marrying her herself was indeed just for the sake of taking care of a few children with multiple people from the beginning, but she married the wrong person. As for the person in front of him, he temporarily believed her once. But if she dares to harm the child, if I can make Gu Yiyi fall into the well once, I can also make her fall into the well a second time. In the next 2 days, due to Gu Yiyi's careful and gentle dressing of the wound, coupled with always being able to produce some delicious food, Sanbao has gone from initially being annoying and curious to now following behind Gu Yiyi. Dabao and Bao are twins, already 6 years old. Compared to Sanbao, who is less than 5 years old, they are naturally more mature. They did not immediately change their view of Gu Yiyi just because of a little delicious food, but their attitude towards her has also changed a lot. At the beginning, there was much discussion in the village about Gu Yiyi's resurrection from death, and many people quietly came outside the courtyard to look around. Seeing that Gu Yiyi is alive and well as the children of the Shen family, I believe that Gu Yiyi has truly come to life. As for Jiang Yuro's side, she was the one who started the fight first. Although she cried and made a scene at home, the Jiang family did not come to the door to find fault. In the blink of an eye, Gu Yiyi had been wearing it for 3 days. At noon, she went to the mountain on the right side of Jiangjia Village and, relying on the crossbows in the space, successfully knocked down 2 rabbits. After drinking congee for a few days, I can't eat it lightly. I can just make braised rabbit meat to improve my food. Carrying the rabbit back home, Gu Yiyi thought that Sanbao and his companions would be very happy to see the rabbit, but as soon as they entered the house, they saw Bao and Bao with anxious expressions. "What's wrong?" Gu Yiyi asked. Bao nervously said, "Sanbao is missing. We've been searching for him for a long time, but we haven't found him." Gu Yiyi put down the rabbit and said, "Could it be running out to play?" "No, if Sanbao goes out to play, he will definitely tell us." Bao immediately spoke up. Gu Yiyi frowned and immediately took Bao and Bao out to find someone, but shortly after leaving the Shen family, she met Wang Auntie in a hurry. As soon as she saw Bao and Bao, Aunt Wang quickly said, "Where's your dad? Tell him quickly, Sanbao has been sold." Chapter 5. Stinky Women, You Seek Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bao and Bao were both startled. Gu Yiyi quickly asked, "What's going on?" Mrs. Wang spat fiercely at Gu Yiyi and said, "You still have the face to ask. Even if you're not your biological child, you're still a child. How could you just sell it?" At this moment, some people in the village returned from work in the morning, while others went to do laundry. The villagers passing by all gathered around when they heard Mrs. Wang's words. Gu Yiyi frowned and spoke coldly, "Don't talk nonsense. When did I sell the 3 treasures? You're still lying. I just saw clearly that it was your brother and sister.In.Law who brought their 3 children into the Wang butcher's house at the west end of the village. Who in the village doesn't know what the Wang butcher is doing? The whole Jiangjia village knows that although Butcher Wang appears to be selling meat in the town, he is actually doing human tooth work. In several nearby villages, some families are unable to survive and have no choice but to sell their children or to be ruthless. If their maids don't want to raise them anymore, they will go to find Butcher Wang. The Butcher Wang had a wide range of connections, and as soon as the child arrived, he immediately saw him off. "Even if we back out, we won't come back." More importantly, he was born 5 big and 3 thick, covered in flesh, and because he carried 2 pig-killing knives all year round, he was full of resentment. Even if the villagers knew what he was doing, they dared not drive him away. Previously, some people couldn't bear to watch and came to the house to argue. However, half of their teeth were knocked out with a punch. Since then, no one in Jiangjia Village has dared to go to Wang Butcher's house except for those who sell children and women. Brother and sister.In.Law. Gu Yiyi quickly remembered. The elder brothers and sisters of the original owner were lazy, greedy and shameless. They seemed to have urged the original owner to sell their 3 children before, but the original owner was still a bit wary of Shen Changfeng, so he didn't make up his mind. Is it true that Sanbao was secretly taken away by them? Without hesitation, Gu Yiyi immediately ran towards the west of the village, and Bao and Bao quickly followed behind. "Bao, go find your dad. He's helping to straighten the bones at Uncle Li's house." Bao shouted to Bao. Bao obediently changed direction and ran towards the other side. When Gu Yiyi followed her memory and ran to Butcher Wang's house, she happened to bump into Gu Duchuan and Lu, who were walking out of Butcher Wang's house with a money bag in their hands and a happy face. "Where are the 3 treasures?" Gu Yiyi immediately asked. Seeing Gu Yiyi, the smile on their faces froze for a moment. Lu stuffed the money bag into her sleeve and said, "Sell it, don't want this money." Your big brother and I are going to keep it for building a new house. Who gave you the courage to sell him? Gu Yiyi frowned tightly and wanted to go in to find Sanbao. Lu immediately stopped Gu Yiyi and said, "What's wrong with you? It's not you." Before she could finish speaking, Lu was pushed away by Gu Yiyi and collided with the nearby courtyard door, causing her to grit her teeth in pain. Gu Yiyi broke into the Wang family and soon saw Sanbao, who was bound and thrown in the corner of the yard, with a pale face in fear. "Sanbao, don't be afraid." Gu Yiyi immediately stepped forward to untie the rope for Sanbao, and Dabao, who followed, quickly helped. The butcher Wang, who was originally packing up and preparing to go to town, heard the commotion and quickly walked out of the house. "What's going on?" Butcher Wang, with a tiger back and a bare waist, his face full of flesh, suddenly stopped in the yard. The villagers who followed over also arrived at this moment. Seeing this situation, they immediately sweated. Gu Yiyi untied the rope for Sanbao and carefully checked to ensure that he was not injured before standing up to look at Butcher Wang. "Before you buy the child, don't you even ask clearly? What qualifications do the two of them have to sell my child?" Butcher Wang frowned and looked at Lu and Gu Duchuan. Lu was annoyed when she was pushed just now and immediately cursed, "We are your elder brother and sister. In law, why are we not qualified? You are so bold that you dare to push me. You. Stop talking nonsense." Butcher Wang impatiently interrupted the Lu family and looked at Gu Yiyi with a fierce expression. "I have already bought this child. No matter what you want to do, everyone will stay." In the past 2 months, his business has not been good, and he finally delivered a child. He is still a well-born boy, and he is sure to sell for a good price. Impossible. Gu Yiyi looked straight at the butcher Wang. "I want to take the child with me. I have paid all the money. You can ask them to come back." "Gu Yiyi, shut up." Gu Duchuan glared at Gu Yiyi. "It's not your own. What are you doing here? Besides, your husband is blind. Are you still afraid of him?" "You're right, if you ask me, all 3 of the Shen family's small oil bottles should be sold." Lu's greedy gaze fixed on Dabao again. "You two are really shameless to the extreme." Gu Yiyi felt a wave of nausea in her heart. "How can you speak, you little slut?" Lu Shi raised her eyebrows and cursed. But when facing Gu Yiyi's cold gaze, Lu couldn't help but be taken aback. When did Gu Yiyi have the courage to look at her like this? Coldly retracting her gaze, Gu Yiyi looked back at the butcher Wang and said, "I've made it very clear that I definitely want to take the child with me. As for the money, you should quickly ask them to get it back. If you feel unhappy, you can also beat them up and vent your anger." Of course, even if Butcher Wang doesn't take action, she must give Gu Duchuan and the Lu family a good lesson. "Humph, what a big breath." Butcher Wang snorted coldly, not even paying attention to Gu Yiyi. He stepped forward and reached out to grab the 3 treasures. Dabao quickly protected his younger brother, and both children were frightened. However, just as Butcher Wang's hand reached out, Gu Yiyi reached out and pinched his wrist. Her hands are delicate and white, and although she usually does a lot of work at home, her skin is still delicate. The difference between the 2 hands looks really huge, and everyone around feels that Gu Yiyi is going to suffer. However, the next moment, a pig-like howl sounded, and Gu Yiyi only flipped her hand lightly. Wang Butcher's entire wrist was twisted by her and could not move. "Stinky woman, let me go." Butcher Wang shouted in pain, never expecting that the soft and weak person in front of him would have such great strength. He tried hard to shake off Gu Yiyi's hand, but the pain in his wrist was as if there were countless needles piercing, making it impossible to exert any force. With a bite of his teeth, the butcher Wang suddenly pulled out the pig-killing knife from his waist and slashed at Gu Yiyi. "Stinky women, you're looking for death." Hiss. Many villagers were so scared that they gasped for breath. Someone quickly shouted, "Shen's wife, quickly dodge." However, Gu Yiyi did not hide or avoid it, but at the moment when Butcher Wang chopped it down, he kicked him in the knee. With a click, the bones moved. Butcher Wang felt as if his knee had been kicked to pieces, causing excruciating pain. His legs softened and he knelt down violently. At the same time, Gu Yiyi quickly snatched the knife from the opponent's hand. The next second, the pig-killing knife with a foul smell had already been placed on the neck of Wang Butcher. Chapter 6. Scared to wet pants. You are listening at novel full.audio. Everyone was stunned by the sight. No one expected the situation to reverse so quickly. Unexpectedly, Gu Yiyi was able to hold a knife against the neck of Butcher Wang. The Butcher Wang was furious and cursed, "You stinky bitch, you." Before he could finish speaking, his neck hurt as Gu Yiyi's knife had already scratched a bloodstain on his neck. "If you dare to curse again, I promise you won't be able to speak in your lifetime." Gu Yiyi raised her eyebrows and smiled in a tone that made people tremble instantly. The Butcher Wang's face turned pale, and he gritted his teeth and cursed, "I don't believe you anymore. Are you a stinky woman who dares to kill someone? If you have the ability, just chop me down, otherwise." "Okay, that's as you wish." Before Wang Butcher could finish speaking, Gu Yiyi raised the pig-killing knife high and without blinking an eye, slashed at him. The fierce killing aura all over her body made it impossible to suspect that she was just scaring people. The latter was shocked and quickly wanted to dodge, but he couldn't break free from Gu Yiyi's twisted wrist. Just as the knife was about to strike his neck, Butcher Wang finally panicked and shouted for mercy. "Auntie, I was wrong, don't kill me." The knife stopped 1 inch away from his neck, and the originally foul-smelling pig-killing knife now shone coldly in Gu Yiyi's hand, causing a layer of goosebumps to instantly form on Wang Butcher's neck. He was so scared that his whole body trembled, and his crotch heated up, so he publicly wet his pants. Gu Yiyi gave a disdainful glance and said, "Child, haven't you returned it yet? Give it back, give it back." Butcher Wang nodded like pounding garlic, afraid of speaking too slowly, so Gu Yiyi directly gave him a knife. "This woman is just a lunatic, actually taking action." Gu Yiyi was amused, but the level of bravado from Butcher Wang was not enough for her. Shaking her twisted arm, Gu Yiyi's expression softened and she led the bow and air bow towards the courtyard door. The onlookers couldn't believe what they had just seen. And Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi were even more stunned, until Gu Yiyi stopped in front of them, and Lu Shi was the first to come to his senses and exclaim in surprise. "What do you want? We are your brother and sister.In.Law, can you still dare to act against us?" Before she could finish speaking, Gu Yiyi grabbed Lu's arm and took her purse directly. "Bitch, give me the money back." Lu rushed forward to grab the money bag. Gu Yiyi dodged and tripped again, causing Lu Shi to fall and eat shit. Her lips hit the ground, causing her to frown in pain. She covered her mouth and got up, spitting out blood with a tooth in it. "Ah! Bitch!" Lu looked at her knocked-out front teeth and was furious. She endured the pain and shouted at Gu Duchuan, "You useless trash, what are you still doing? Your lowly hoof dares to attack me. Why don't you teach her a lesson?" Gu Duchuan finally regained his senses and frowned, pulling Gu Yiyi's arm tightly. "How could you?" With a click. Accompanied by Gu Duchuan's screams, Gu Yiyi quickly grabbed his arm and pulled it out of its socket. Lu screamed and ran to Gu Duchuan's side, looking at Gu Yiyi in panic and anger. "Bitch, he's your brother. Dare you break his arm? Don't worry, it's just a dislocation. This time, I'll give you a small lesson. If there's another time." Gu Yiyi glanced at the two of them and raised her eyebrows, "But don't blame me for being impolite. What brother and sister.In.Law, they are just vampires that squeezed the original owner in various ways. The original owner was submissive, and I didn't get used to them. If it weren't for so many villagers present, some things wouldn't have gone too far. Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi probably wouldn't be able to walk back on their legs." Gu Yiyi's tone was neither light nor heavy, without any intention of intimidation. but it made Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi shiver uncontrollably and take several steps back. The villagers felt satisfied and couldn't help but tremble with fear. And this time, with his son's kung fu, the Wang butcher, who had collapsed on the ground with a great loss of face, had already climbed up. As he rushed forward, he pointed at Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi and cursed loudly. Just as he was approaching behind Gu Yiyi, he secretly touched another pig-killing knife hidden on his body. Seizing the opportunity, he suddenly drew his knife and slashed towards Gu Yiyi with his back to him. "Bitch, go to hell." The action of the butcher Wang was too sudden, and the villagers were startled and didn't have time to remind them. Gu Yiyi lightly curled her lips. As early as butcher Wang walked towards her, she had already been on guard and was about to take action. However, in the next moment, butcher Wang's knife fell and happened to hit his foot. With the blade facing downwards, the heavy pig-killing knife struck the back of the foot and fell to the ground with a clang. The butcher Wang immediately covered his feet and shouted loudly. He couldn't stand on one foot and fell heavily to the ground, raising a gust of dust. The crowd stared blankly, wondering if they were planning to launch a surprise attack, but accidentally didn't secure their knife. Gu Yiyi was also stunned for a moment, but then keenly noticed that there seemed to be an extra small stone on the ground. She looked outside the courtyard and found Shen Changfeng standing on the right side of the low wall, who had arrived at some point. Is it Shen Changfeng who helped himself? As soon as this idea came out, Gu Yiyi felt it was unlikely. Shen Changfeng is blind. She has carefully observed this in the past 2 days and is not pretending, unless the other party can distinguish between sound and position. It's really difficult to hit the Wang butcher with a stone through the yard, relying on listening to the sound to identify the location. Gu Yiyi looked at Wang butcher's hand again, and there were no signs of being injured by stones on his hand. Is it true that I am being too careless? It's really that butcher Wang's hand is slippery, and this stone may have been on the ground from the beginning, but I didn't notice it. With Gu Yiyi's contemplation, Bao had already taken Shen Changfeng to the courtyard. At first, Aunt Wang misunderstood that Gu Yiyi was going to sell the 3 treasures. When she saw Shen Changfeng, she quickly explained to him and also talked about Gu Yiyi's injury to the Wang butcher and his attempt to retrieve the 3 treasures. She praised him greatly. Of course, not only did she want to tell Shen Changfeng what had happened, but she was also afraid that the misunderstanding she had just made would make Gu Yiyi hold a grudge and then take action against her. Shen Changfeng's dim gaze fell on Gu Yiyi's direction and he nodded lightly, "Thank you very much." "No need," Gu Yiyi shook her head and glanced at San Bao, whose face was still slightly pale. "Let's take them back first." "Okay," Shen Changfeng responded. Gu Yiyi and Shen Changfeng left the yard, and the villagers who were watching looked at the miserable situation of butcher Wang again. They cursed in their hearts and quickly dispersed. But Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi were in a state of embarrassment, afraid to stop Gu Yiyi from settling the accounts, and afraid that the butcher Wang would come to his senses and ask them to repay the money. Under the disdainful gaze of everyone, they also endured the pain and walked quickly. However, as soon as the 2 of them walked out about half a mile, a female voice called out to them from behind. Chapter 7. I have a way to teach Gu Yiyi a hard lesson. You are listening at Novel Full.Audio. Jiangjia limped up to Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi. "Wait a minute, I have something to say to you." Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi both began to sweat in pain. Although they knew that the other party was the daughter of the village chief, they didn't have the heart to please them at the moment and ignored them. They just wanted to hurry up and go see the doctor. Jiangjia saw that they were about to leave and quickly spoke up, "Gu Yiyi, that slut has beaten you up like this. Don't you want to retaliate against her?" Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi paused in their footsteps. Lu Shi looked at Jiangjia and spoke first, "Euro girl, what do you mean by this?" Jiangjia pointed to her leg, which was not yet healed. "I was also injured by that slut Gu Yiyi. I saw what happened just now. She not only robbed the money, but also beat you up like this. Can you swallow this bad breath in your heart? Just now she heard someone say that Gu Yiyi is coming to Wang Butcher's house. I endured the pain in my leg and hid in the dark, just to watch over Gu Yiyi's misfortune. I didn't expect that slut to be so powerful, even the butcher Wang was injured by her. If we stick to it, we won't be able to beat Gu Yiyi in any way, but Jiang Yuro's face flashed with a hint of malice, and she continued to speak to Lu and Gu Duchuan with a smile. As long as you are willing, I have a way to teach her a hard lesson, and I can also help you earn some money. In the courtyard of the Shen family, Gu Yiyi carefully checked Sanbao and confirmed again that she was not injured except for some red marks on her wrist. Does your wrist hurt? Gu Yiyi asked Sanbao. Sanbao nodded, but soon shook his head again. No, it doesn't hurt. Gu Yiyi took out a candy and said, the three treasures are really strong. Eating a candy can suppress shock. Sanbao looked at the candy in surprise. This time, he didn't look at Shen Changfeng on the side anymore, but directly took it. Thank you, mother. You are welcome. Gu Yiyi rubbed his head and took out 2 more candies to give to De Bao and Air Bao before speaking to Shen Changfeng. I really didn't know about this incident, but after all, they are my siblings. I apologize to you. No need, I should be grateful to you for saving Sanbao. Shen Changfeng's tone remained faint, but there was an imperceptible softness compared to before. After thinking for a moment, Gu Yiyi said, don't worry, even if they are my elder brother and sister. Law, if they dare to attack the 3 treasures and their ideas again in the future, I will still not be polite. Also, Gu Yiyi took out her purse and looked at the 3 dolls eating candy. I snatched this money. Today we have an extra meal. What do you want to eat? I want to eat meat. Sanbao immediately spoke up. Okay, where are De Bao and Air Bao? De Bao and Air Bao glanced at each other. De Bao said, I can do anything. I want to eat steamed buns. Air Bao spoke softly and added, is that okay? Of course, that's fine. Gu Yiyi nodded with a smile, I'll go buy it. Coincidentally, I also beat rabbits. Today, I'll make braised rabbit meat. Okay. Sanbao suddenly jumped with joy, and his previously frightened face instantly regained its rosy color. Although De Bao and Air Bao were not as lively as he was, their small faces clearly showed joy and anticipation. The atmosphere in the small courtyard suddenly became lively. Shen Changfeng sat quietly at the table, listening to Sanbao's clamor to accompany Gu Yiyi to buy steamed buns, and lightly curled his lips. His eyebrows relaxed, and his face looked even more handsome. Gu Yiyi estimated the time, made lunch first, cooked braised rabbit meat, and after finishing, led Air Bao and San Bao to the town to buy steamed buns. I originally wanted to bring De Bao with me, but he said he wanted to stay and take care of the house. Looking at the sensible De Bao, Gu Yiyi agreed and only asked if he had anything he wanted to eat. De Bao thought for a long time before he said tomatoes on sticks. After buying steamed buns, Gu Yiyi bought some rice grains, bought many snacks and several strings of tomatoes on sticks with 2 dolls. When he returned, not only Sanbao, but even Erbao's small face was filled with joy. The dinner consisted of vegetable congee and bought steamed buns. Although they were not rich, they were a good meal for the Shen family. The next day, Gu Yiyi had breakfast and thought of going to the mountain again. When Air Bao and San Bao found out, they immediately wanted to follow. However, before Gu Yiyi could agree, a villager hurriedly arrived at the Shen family. Something's wrong with your family. You should go back and take a look quickly. Gu Yiyi looked at the visitor and recognized him as the neighbor living next door to the Gu family. What happened? Gu Yiyi asked. I heard from your sister. Law that your brother's arm is very painful. He had a high fever last night and now he's confused and can't even speak clearly. Gu Yiyi frowned. I just dislocated Gu Duchuan's arm. As long as he finds a doctor to connect it in time, it shouldn't be a big problem. Seeing that Gu Yiyi was silent, the villager urged, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go back and take a look. If your brother really has a big problem, it's a big deal." "I understand, I'll go back now," Gu Yiyi responded. "Whether it's true or false, since someone has come to report it, it's better to go back and take a look to avoid falling out on people. After all, in the eyes of the villagers, they are a family, and Gu Dachwan's arm was injured by himself. Let Er Bao and San Bao stay at home well," and Gu Yiyi quickly returned to the Gu family. The Gu family has built 3 tiled houses, and the courtyard is much larger than the Shen family. Although it may not be very grand, the conditions in Jiangjia Village are not bad either. As soon as Gu Yiyi walked into the yard, she saw Lu Shi coming out of the room. "Are you okay to come back? It was you who caused it. Your brother is about to die." Lu pointed at Gu Yiyi and cursed loudly, her fallen front teeth leaking air. When she spoke, it seemed a bit comical, but the anger and hatred on her face seemed like she was about to pounce and bite Gu Yiyi to death. "It's just a dislocated arm, why are we going to die?" Gu Yiyi stared at Lu Shi and said. "Don't believe it." Lu Shi gave way and pointed to the room, saying with hatred, "Don't believe it. Look for yourself. Why did the Gu family have a broom star like you, which killed their own brother?" Gu Yiyi looked at Lu Shi again with unclear eyes before walking towards the room. Lu Shi stared at her fiercely all along, until the moment Gu Yiyi walked into the room, a sudden smile appeared on her face. In the room, Gu Dachwan, who had already been prepared, covered his mouth and nose and sprinkled all the hallucinogens in his hand on Gu Yiyi. The latter's face changed greatly, "You." But before he could finish speaking, he collapsed unsteadily. Chapter 8. Who was sold? You are listening at novel full.audio. When the overpowering drug dissipated, Lu walked into the room and looked at Gu Yiyi, who had fallen to the ground, feeling a sense of relief in her heart. Licking his fallen front teeth, his heart suddenly became angry again, and he gritted his teeth and opened his mouth. "Bitch, if it weren't for you selling for a good price, I would definitely have pulled out all your teeth. Alright, let's not talk about this for now. Hurry up and tie up the people and hide them in the firewood shed. I'll hurry up and set up the cart, otherwise if the others wake up, there will be trouble." Gu Dachwan quickly said to the Lu family. Gu Yiyi's previous injury to them has left him with lingering fear. After the two of them hurriedly tied up Gu Yiyi, put her in a burlap bag, and moved her to the firewood room, Jiangjia also quietly arrived at Gu's house. Upon hearing from Gu Dachwan and Lu Shi that she had succeeded, she felt extremely proud and said, "Did you sell her to the old bachelor from Daeong Village as I said?" "It's him. I already contacted him yesterday. Although that old bachelor is lame and ugly, he really has some family background and is willing to give 20 taels of silver." Gu Dachwan exclaimed excitedly. "Shut up." Lu Shi glared at Gu Dachwan and then smiled at Jiangjia. "Actually, we don't have much money either. We even spent silver on sweating pills, and we went to see a doctor yesterday." "I didn't want to share the money," Jiangjia interrupted Lu Shi directly. "I just want Gu Yiyi, that lowly life is better than death. Gu Yiyi injured her and made her so embarrassed. Even if she was burned directly, it would be difficult to dispel her hatred. As for the old bachelor in Daeong Village, she had heard before that although he had some money, he was not only lame and ugly, but also had bought 3 wives before. Not long after buying it back, he tortured everyone to death, and the longest one didn't last for a month. As for Gu Yiyi, even if she is lucky enough to escape, her reputation will also be ruined. When it comes to losing face, she will have to see how Gu Yiyi can survive." Upon hearing that Jiangjia didn't even want money, Lu finally calmed down and praised her for being smart and imposing. "Alright, don't be too polite. What about Gu Yiyi? Before selling her, I'll teach her a good lesson." Jiangjia's eyes showed a fierce expression. That old bachelor said, don't ruin your face. Lu hesitated and spoke up. Don't worry, I hope she can be sold smoothly more than you, Jiangjia sneered. Gu Yiyi injured her leg, so she naturally had to break the other person's leg, just in time for Gu Yiyi to escape. After all, it was Jiangjia's idea. Lu and Gu Duchuan were afraid that if they continued to obstruct, the other party would not leave them all 20 taels of silver, so they pointed in the direction of the firewood house. Jiangjia went to the firewood shed in the backyard, and soon, the sound of slutty people could be faintly heard inside the shed. Lu Shi and Gu Duchuan dared not delay and quickly went to get the car. By the time they finished setting up the cart and returned to the firewood shed, Jiangjia had already left, and the sack was still tightly tied. Thinking that they could get back 20 taels of silver by sending the person over, they were overjoyed. They moved the person onto the ox cart, covered it with hay, and drove out the door. The neighbor who just reported the news was taken aback when he saw Gu Duchuan sitting in the car. Lu nudged Gu Duchuan with her elbow, implying that the other person was pretending to be weak, and then lied, taking advantage of a slight recovery. She quickly went to see the doctor again. As for the hay on the car, it's just that it's in a hurry and there's not enough time to unload it. Then he ignored his neighbor and drove away in a cart. More than an hour later, Lu and Gu Duchuan sat on the ox cart and leisurely returned to Jiangjia Village, looking very happy together. If we had known your sister was so valuable, we should have sold her early. Who said it's not right? My parents have been calling her a loser since she was young, and now thinking about it, we really should have more of these losers. Gu Duchuan's expression showed a hint of envy. You just saw that old bachelor's 5 big tiled houses are really rich. If I had sold a few more sisters for money, maybe we could have built such a good house too. That's right, but that old bachelor is really anxious. He didn't even bother to inspect the goods, and after giving money, he hurriedly carried the burlap bag into the room. If he had known we should have had 30 taels. Lu regretted it for a moment. Gu Duchuan immediately agreed, yes, really. Before he could finish speaking, Gu Duchuan suddenly froze as he looked at the figure carrying a wild chicken on the village road ahead. Yes, did I get dizzy? Lu followed Gu Duchuan's gaze in confusion and was immediately stunned. Gu Yiyi. She has already been sold by them, isn't it true that she escaped back so quickly? But this doesn't look like it either. Gu Yiyi naturally saw Lu Shi and Gu Duchuan, and curled her lips playfully and smiled at them. It seems that Big Brother's illness has completely healed, and he can even drive so quickly. You, how could you be here? Gu Duchuan looked at Gu Yiyi in shock. I'm not here, where should I be? Gu Yiyi paused slightly, with a stronger smile on her face. Can it be? In a sack. Or perhaps, on the bed of the old bachelor from the neighboring village. Although she had guessed that the Lu family was not well-intentioned when she first stepped into the Gu family, she did not expect that they had not sold 3 treasures, so she had her mind set on herself. It's just that a little bit of low-quality hallucinogens can't dazzle her. Gu Duchuan and Lu's faces turned pale and pale. They looked at the person in front of them in panic. If the person they had sold was not Gu Yiyi, then who would it be? Something's wrong, go find the village chief quickly. A villager ran over from behind Gu Duchuan and Lu Shi, and their anxious shouts made them tremble all over. What's going on? Why do we need to find the village chief? Lu's reaction was faster than Gu Duchuan's and he immediately asked. We just came back from the neighboring village and saw someone being surrounded by people, shouting like crazy, with messy hair and clothes. We would hit anyone we saw, but when we got closer and looked closely, it was the village head's Euro. The villager ran and shouted a few words as he didn't have time to elaborate. But these few sentences were enough to make Gu Duchuan and Lu burst into a cold sweat, especially Gu Duchuan, who was so scared that he almost fell off the ox cart. When Jiang village chief heard the news and rushed to Daong village to bring Jiangjia back, this matter spread throughout the entire village. Everyone gathered at the entrance of the village, waiting. Lu and Gu Duchuan nervously hid in the crowd, while Gu Yiyi hugged her arms and stood with the previous Mrs. Wang watching the excitement. Jiang Village chief's face turned pale, and he was followed by the old bachelor who was the seller. He had several bloodstains scratched by his nails on his face. And Jiang Yuro, who was being pulled by village chief Jiang, had a disheveled hair, a pale face, and a large piece of clothing torn from the collar, which could only be tightly pulled by her hands. When she saw Gu Yiyi standing among the crowd, she was taken aback for a moment. Then, with hatred in her eyes, she broke free from Jiang Village chief's hand and rushed towards Gu Yiyi, shouting loudly. "Bitch, it's all you who caused me harm." Chapter 9. Village Chief with Crooked Buttocks. You are listening at novel-full.audio. Gu Yiyi was already on guard, and her hands were too lazy to move. With a light dodge, the other party fell and ate shit. Everyone was supposed to watch the excitement, but seeing this situation, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jiang Yuro was filled with shame and anger. She gritted her teeth and said, "Gu Yiyi, you slut, you framed me. It's all you. If it weren't for you, how could I have been sold to that cripple?" At this moment, the village chief reacted and quickly pulled Jiang Yuro behind him. He spoke seriously, with a look of supporting his daughter. "Gu Shi, what's going on here? Why are you targeting my family, Yuro?" Gu Yiyi snorted coldly. It seemed that the village chief was not a good bird either. She pretended to be surprised and shook the wild chicken in her hand. "Village chief, you can't talk nonsense. I went to the mountains to catch wild chickens and give the children a tooth sacrifice, but I never saw Jiang Yuro at all. She herself said she was sold to a cripple, and everyone is here. Just ask who sold it." The villagers were afraid that the excitement might not be big enough, so upon hearing these words, they began to chatter. The one following the village chief is the buyer's cripple. Why didn't the village chief ask? It's a big crime for Renyazi to be investigated by the government. I'm afraid others won't know about such a big battle. Although Gu is not a good person, we cannot wrongly accuse others. That's right, we need to ask the seller who it is. The village chief was very angry when he saw the villagers being led away by Gu Yiyi's words. He was the village chief, and now no one is listening to him. So he angrily rebuked, "I am the village chief, and the presiding officer has given me the right to come. Don't interrupt me." The old bachelor somehow grabbed the two members of the Lu family who were about to steal, and pushed them towards the village chief. "I'm not from your village, it's these two people who came to sell my woman. Now my mother.In.Law has been taken away by you. Either lose money or give it to my mother.In.Law, you can handle it yourself." Jiang Yuro felt nauseous when she heard the old bachelor taking a bite from his wife, and went crazy as if she wanted to pounce and hit him. "Pooh, you cripple, who is your mother.In.Law? Don't talk nonsense. You ruin my reputation, I'll kill you." The village chief didn't make Jiang Yuro go crazy and hit anyone again this time, and fought hard to hold her down. But as he got older, he couldn't breathe anymore and his face turned red. Without paying attention, Jiang Yuro slapped him in the face. The village chief was stunned and everyone looked at each other, afraid to speak. Gu Yiyi raised her eyebrows, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction in her heart. "Oh roar, dog bites dog." Jiang Yuro suddenly became honest and timidly withdrew her hand. "Dad, I didn't mean to," stammered the village chief. Had bulging veins in his hand and slapped Jiang Yuro hard with his backhand. "Have you had enough trouble yet? It's not embarrassing." The slap was a bit heavy. Jiang Yuro's eyes were filled with stars, and there was a smell of rust in her mouth. Her tears came down quickly, but she dared not cry out. She could only look at her father with tears in her eyes. The village chief impatiently turned his head and stopped looking at her, then turned to see the two members of the Lu family. Before the village chief could speak, Gu Duchuan flattered and leaned forward. "Village chief, misunderstandings, they are all misunderstandings. We didn't intend to sell Euro girl, she must have been careless herself. Jiang Euro saw Gu Duchuan biting back, and her eyes were about to burst into flames. Her face was swollen and her mouth was unclear, but she could still hear a rough idea. Shameless. It's just that you're not well-intentioned and want to sell women for money. The old bachelor saw that it was impossible to bring the person back, so he grabbed Gu Duchuan's collar and said fiercely. Give me the money back. Either use someone to pay off the debt. Gu Duchuan's heart tightened and he shouted. What money? No money. Everyone has given you money, you didn't take it seriously and let someone run away. It's none of my business. The village chief's face turned even worse when he thought that the current situation was caused by Gu Duchuan and the others. These two people always indulge in eating and drinking on a daily basis, and their morals are not upright. This will also provoke people from other villages to laugh at, causing him to lose the prestige of the village chief. It is necessary to treat them well. He cleared his throat and said to the old bachelor, since you have found the seller, let's settle this matter with you and them. This person is from my village, but I won't lean towards them. After speaking, he said to Gu Duchuan again, Gu Duchuan, I don't want to pursue anything else, but the people from other villages have already chased you to your doorstep. I won't let you ruin the reputation of the village. Hurry up and handle this matter, otherwise I can't guarantee that you will still have your place in the village in the future. This statement is already a threat. The villagers are staring at each other with big eyes. Are you trying to drive Gu Duchuan and his wife away? Gu Duchuan panicked. The village was his root. If he were driven away, how could he survive? However, he couldn't bear to take out the silver in his pocket and was hesitating when he noticed that Lu Shi had run away while others were not paying attention. With confidence in his heart, he regained his stubborn and shameless demeanor. I don't have money, I don't believe you guys are searching. If you find it, I'll give it to you. I don't have anyone. If you insist. After a pause, Gu Duchuan pointed at Gu Yiyi and said, this is my sister. I made the decision to promise her to you. You can take the person away yourself. Gu Yiyi's eyes flickered with coldness, as if she had beaten her lightly and dared to have her ideas. Jiang Euro was overjoyed. Fortunately, Gu Duchuan, this scoundrel, still has some brains. Yes, that's it. Get that slut away. She chimed in and said, yes, he gave you the dowry. Just take the person away. The village chief frowned and gestured to Jiang Euro not to speak too much. She instinctively touched her swollen cheek and retreated. The old bachelor looked at Gu Yiyi and found that the woman was even more beautiful than the village chief's daughter, which made him drool. Gu Yiyi glanced at Jiang Euro, who was disheveled, and deliberately raised her tone. Brother, I have already married someone. How can you talk nonsense and deceive people? Isn't it that you acted as a matchmaker for Jiang Euro, who volunteered to meet people? Take a look at her clothes, she probably has already slept with someone without a matchmaker. In my opinion, village chief, you should fulfill this marriage. Otherwise, how can Euro get married in the future? As soon as she said this, the villagers' eyes changed. Yes, she had been pulling people for so long. Who knows if the body is still pure or not? Jiang Euro is about to vomit blood. It should be Gu Yiyi who has a bad reputation. How could it be her? She was so angry that she trembled all over and cursed, you are slander. Evil little slut, you are you. You haven't come out for half a day, she rolled her eyes and fainted with anger. When the person fell, the village chief didn't care about this or that anymore, so he led the person home. As soon as the village chief left, he saw the Lu family shouting for someone to kill and running over. She looked flustered, followed by Wang Butcher waving a pig-killing knife behind her. The butcher Wang was fierce, chasing after him while shouting, pay back the money. Gu Yiyi's lips curved as she arrived at the right time. It was not in vain for her to specially deliver a letter to Butcher Wang. The villagers made way and Lu ran straight towards Gu Duchuan. Two groups of people collided, and the old bachelor and the butcher Wang each grabbed one. Gu Yiyi and his wife looked at me, and I looked at you with fear in their eyes. Chapter 10. Good luck, eating chicken for noon. You are listening at novel full.audio. Afterwards, I heard from Aunt Wang that Gu Yiyi and the Lu family were beaten up by Butcher Wang. The old bachelor's money was returned, and the Butcher Wang insisted on the two of them repaying it, but they didn't have any money. So the Butcher Wang tied the two of them to his own house to do hard work, and even half-dead fell ill. But this is all for later discussion. Gu Yiyi returned home carrying a wild chicken, while Shen Changfeng and his 3 children were at home. It was almost lunchtime now. She showed them the wild chicken with a smile on her face and a cheerful tone. "De bao, bao, san bao, see what your mother has brought back." As the words fell, all 3 children remained silent, looking unwilling to step forward. The atmosphere was a bit strange, and Gu Yiyi keenly sensed something was wrong. The smile on her face disappeared. Shen Changfeng did not lift his eyes to look at her, as he was tending to some herbs in his hands with a calm expression. "Gu Yiyi, there's nothing left at home. If you want to help your brother and sister.In.law, go out and think of a way for yourself." De Bao's small body stood in front of the 3 of them, although he didn't speak, the meaning was also very clear. Recalling the behavior of the original owner who wished to empty out Shen Changfeng to compensate for that pair of vampires, she understood it from the bottom of her heart. In the past, whenever the original owner returned to Gu's home, there would always be a big scene. It's either rice, flour, oil, or money, or things from moving. When Shen Changfeng was not around, she scolded and blamed the 3 children, and even made them do heavy work, but didn't dare to hit them. She was afraid that he would come back to settle the accounts. When Shen Changfeng was around, she rolled around and found a way to pull some things out of this house. Gu Yiyi sighed, realizing that the original owner had caused her quite a bit of trouble. To be honest, she doesn't want to leave the village and take a look, but she hasn't figured out the rules of this era yet. Secondly, if she goes out to live alone, her personal space will definitely attract attention. Thirdly, after a lifetime of fighting and killing, she really enjoys the peaceful days now. And there are also these 3 children, who are both adorable and well-behaved, making her unable to resist taking care of them. God knows, she has no resistance to cute cubs at all. After some thought, Gu Yiyi said, "I admit that I was wrong about what happened before, but I have already made changes. I know you don't believe me, but I still have to live those days, right? Looking back, I will definitely raise the 3 children to be fair and chubby. At present, my only idea is to raise a good child and live a peaceful life." After speaking, she didn't care about the 4 of them, father and son, and went to the yard to tidy up the wild chickens. Shen Changfeng naturally didn't believe her. This woman has always been strange since she woke up from falling into the water. If she doesn't have any bad intentions towards them now, it doesn't mean she won't have them in the future. He originally intended to drive her away today under the pretext of Gu Yiyi and the others, but he didn't expect her to stay calmly. This is not Gu Yiyi's style. Usually, when he says no, the other party won't give up. If it weren't for the severe injury a while ago, he would have taken action to end this wicked woman. His eyes will soon regain their sight, leaving an outsider by his side is always inconvenient, and sooner or later it will be bad. No, we need to find a way to get her away. There are some things that we can't let her know. Just as he was thinking, Sanbao tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, Mom has thrown all the chicken feathers into the yard. I want to pick up some to make chicken feathers and shuttlecocks." A hint of guilt surged in Shen Changfeng's heart, and the children followed him through a lot of hardships. Anything they didn't eat or drink was also considered. He doesn't even have a playable object, anyway, he just needs to keep an eye on it. "Okay, let De Bao come with you and bring back Dad to make shuttlecocks for you." The 2 children immediately took action upon hearing the words, excited by the bouncing footsteps. Gu Yiyi had already cooked a pot of water in the kitchen before leaving, just to come back and cook quickly. She put some salt in the pot, stirred it up, and waited for it to melt. Then he wiped the neck of the wild chicken with a kitchen knife, and the chicken blood was collected in a wooden basin. After bleeding, she threw the wild chicken into the pot and froze it, mixing a bowl of salt water. Pour salt water into the chicken blood, stir well, and when the chicken blood cools down, it will solidify into a lump. Don't look down on this little chicken blood, stir-fry it, it's also a nutritious and delicious dish. She pulled out the wild chicken, and just as she had finished retracting her fur, she saw two little ones flickering their big eyes as they walked over. What, is this hungry? Can't wait for the meal to start. Gu Yiyi coughed, and San Bao, who was about to bend down to pick up chicken feathers, withdrew his hand. De Bao tried hard to keep his small face straight, but didn't want to lose his courtesy. Suddenly, his small face kept changing. In the end, he still opened his mouth with a hint of laughter. Mother, you don't want these chicken feathers. Let's take a few to make shuttlecocks, okay? Oh, I originally wanted to play shuttlecock. Gu Yiyi looked sad at De Bao's appearance as a little adult. She is dead, Shen Changfeng, and even if she is angry with her, she will let the child follow her. De Bao will come to do everything. She really doesn't care for the child. She looked at the two children with gentle eyes. Okay, but you don't know how to deal with these dirty chicken feathers. After finishing the chicken later, my mother will do it for you, okay? San Bao looked at the chicken feathers on the ground, then at the chicken in Gu Yiyi's hand, and whispered. My mother not only makes us chicken feathers and shuttlecocks, but also makes us eat chicken, right? Without hesitation, Gu Yiyi nodded and said, of course, it's time for you to grow your body and eat meat. San Bao's eyes lit up and he jumped out from behind De Bao, bouncing around. Okay, there's chicken for lunch, eat meat. De Bao was a bit shocked. Her mother really changed her temper and didn't do anything to them even when she returned from the Gu family. He turned his head and glanced at Shen Changfeng, then quietly looked at Gu Yiyi. Then he lowered his voice and said, Mother, thank you to our parents. Gu Yiyi caught a glimpse of De Bao's small expression and knew what he was thinking. It's just that I'm afraid she'll make things difficult for Shen Changfeng again, so I'll speak up for his father. So he smiled and said, you don't need to thank me. My mother also wants to make up for the three of you. As a family, I won't say thank you. With this little episode, the three children no longer held a deep grudge against her. Especially San Bao, knowing that he could eat meat, kept circling around Gu Yiyi, with a small mouth like wiping honey, praising non-stop. I'll say your hands look good, my mother, and I'll say your mother's stewed chicken smells good. De Bao and Bao, on the other hand, guarded the door and did not actively enter, nor did they hinder her from doing things. When the chicken was stewed, the two little guys outside the door couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. The delicious chicken soup was put into the basin, and a cage of coarse flour mantou was also put out of the pot. Gu Yiyi was afraid of scalding her three children, so she kicked them out and arranged some work. De Bao, Bao, San Bao, take the bowls and chopsticks and have chicken soup. The three children eagerly responded, got it, Mom. Gu Yiyi smiled, the child is the child.